quickly give you an overview of what I'm expecting to do in this project, which will probably take several days. I've got a single seal from Ford parts dealer that I was able to hopefully find that will fit my CNG fuel injectors. I need to remove a lot of this upper fuel, both the CNG and the gasoline fuel, because on a bifuel vehicle the gasoline injectors fit into the CNG injectors, but you still have to get all this other emissions control stuff off before you get the fuel system layer off, and then you can get down to the actual injectors. I'm reasonably sure that my lean code that's going to prevent me from getting a smog this year has to do with when I replaced my spark plugs. These 20-year-old seals basically disintegrated. Probably could have predicted that, but what do you do when you need spark plugs? You got to take the spark plugs out, you take the fuel injectors out, and the seals fall apart, and then you're supposed to just replace the seals. Who knew that these were end of life? And so now I can't get all of the seals that I need, but I'm going to try to get as many of these as I can once I confirm that this fits. I believe that this YL3Z-9F596-AB seal is the one that will fit between the spark plug and the CNG injector. Once I confirm that, I'll see if I can buy the other 7 while I have the engine apart. I can't so far find the other 2. There's another smaller one that goes on the bottom of the CNG injector, and an even smaller one than that that goes between the CNG injector and the fuel rail. Worst case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to seal that with some kind of either aftermarket O-ring, or possibly even, if I have to, temporarily use that with a silicone tape, which I do not recommend nor advise, because silicone can really screw up your catalytic converter, but I don't expect that to get in the fuel stream because it's tape. Regardless, anything that I say during this process should not be construed as authoritative nor recommended. This is purely for educational purposes, in the sense of what you probably shouldn't do to your vehicle, nor do I really know anything about cars. That said, we're going to be removing our CompuValve controller. We're going to be removing the emissions air intake from the what I guess I'll call the throttle body, and make sure this is clean. All the emissions tubes should be vacuum tested and good, but we'll still probably have to take most of that off to open the area up so we can take this high pressure CNG manifold out, as well as the lower pressure gasoline fuel rail, and then get all those injectors out of there and see what we can do to make this thing airtight, because a lean code, as I understand it, means that I'm getting too much air. And I cleaned all my injectors, I replaced my spark plugs. I'm not getting any codes that indicate a cylinder issue, and because the state of California doesn't care about the CNG piece, it only smogs based on the gasoline piece. The individual gasoline injectors will fire off and give you a specific cylinder error if you've got a problem with one of your injectors or spark plugs. I know because I get those all the time when these little bastards leak and water gets onto the top of the engine, and that water gets into the cylinder, and then your coils end up shorting out, and it's a whole nother thing I could do probably a video on. But just suffice to say, I'm not getting that code, and so I'm fairly confident that my spark plugs and my coil are fine, and the air is getting in somewhere. I know it's not getting in here. I went ahead and cleaned my mass airflow sensor, and I replaced my air filter. I'm still getting there, and I know that all this is tight, and I smoked everything, and everything is good. Common sense tells me that when those seals disintegrated, that my attempt to seal it the first time was inadequate, and air is getting in at the injectors, which is going to cause a lean code, because you don't want air to get in anywhere but right here. The air comes in through that hole, goes through the filter, goes through past the airflow sensor, gets its temperature taken, goes through the little throttle body based upon the throttle position, and a certain amount of air goes in at a certain temperature. A little pulse width modulation causes the fuel injector to spit a certain amount of gas in a certain time interval, and then the little sensor on the other side needs to be able to parrot out the right freaking number to say, yes ma'am, I've seen the correct amount of oxygen, and I have fuel, and then of course there's a whole other thing with the vacuum that opens up the EGR valve and causes a certain amount of that unburned fuel to get recirculated, and all the magic that causes the state of California to piss itself. But none of that has anything to do with what we're talking about, because that's not really what's going on. We're simply saying that too much air is getting into the system somewhere. The logical place the air is getting in at this point, knowing what I know about the history of my engine and not your engine, is at the fuel injector. So yes, I did the low-hanging fruit, cleaned my mass airflow sensor. I replaced my air filter, which is usually what does it when it fixes this lean code, especially since I'm getting the lean code on both banks. And I replaced all 8 spark plugs, because if we're going to do 1 spark plug, why not do 8 spark plugs, especially since they were all about the same age. Fun fact though, when I got everything apart, I must have had like 4 different coils from different batches. So I know that everyone before me who owned this vehicle most likely were replacing those coils and spark plugs one at a time. And I get that when you're paying someone else hourly rates to do the labor, but since I'm doing it myself, I can take as long as I want, and I'd rather just do it once and be inconvenienced for a week rather than having to dismantle the whole freaking engine every time I have to replace a spark plug or a coil. That said, I didn't replace any of the coils because I'm really cheap. I did replace the spark plugs because they were just 20-year-old spark plugs as far as I could tell, and why not? And I'm going to try replacing it with this new Ford O-ring, and then ordering as many as I can find for the CNG injectors and work around that to the best I can. And that's going to be the rest of this video, hopefully. By which I mean the air filter housing, the underside of which is where your mass airflow sensor is, the temperature little sensor here, which is part of the air delivery system to your throttle body. Again, if I had any idea what I was talking about, which I don't. I do want to reiterate, because I sort of blurred it last time, that this is an educational video, not intended as advice. I do not expect nor recommend you to follow anything that I do here for your own vehicle, because my vehicle is something that I understand and your vehicle is not. So nothing that I say that applies to my vehicle necessarily has any corollary at all to yours. And if you decide that something that I say here applies to you, you should assume full responsibility for that and not get mad at me because I happen to share this learning experience where I try to figure out how to make a relatively complex system work, by which we need to have a very specific ratio of air to fuel, regardless of if it's CNG or gasolino, el gasolino, as they say, and my friends to the south say. You get it. I won't go any farther down that rabbit hole. Delightful. It just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? Anyway, let's stay focused. This then is almost certainly, because this is where the high pressure fuel comes in, so it comes out. Also, factoid this big little cable, this thick guy, this big black cable. Okay, seriously, I'm going to stop. This, as I understand it, is from the cooling system, because it's the radiator displaces the heat that allows your engine to not melt down into slag. This water heats up. That water then is allowed to circulate through this piece, so that as the high pressure gas gets converted into a lower pressure gas that gets injected into the engine, that it doesn't freeze up and cause problems just because of the nature of converting a high pressure gas to a low pressure gas. Right. Anywho, this has to come apart. That stuff comes apart, things come apart, everything comes apart, and then everything comes off, and then that's where we're going to go. Anyway, hopefully we'll have a wider area where I'm working, so you can see more. I will also probably move the camera around to focus on the areas I'm working, and I will do my best to stay out of the way of the camera and see, purely as a test, whether or not I can actually create a video that's worth watching. There's a couple of other points I'd like to make during this intro period, which most of you will probably skip past. If you know where to get these seals, you have a stock on hand, or you know somebody, maybe even some Chinese or Canadian company that's still manufacturing O-rings for these CNG injectors for Ford F-150s, I like to believe that later model year Fords probably use the same parts. And maybe if there's a new number that I can use, if you can leave that for me in the comment, then I will put in a good word for you with your deity of choice, that they give you some kind of bonus in this life to compensate you for the good karma that you've generated by helping me, because it would help me greatly to be able to be compliant in this state. Yeah, because there's not a whole lot of really good options. If it can't pass smog, they're not going to give me registration. I'm not going to be able to drive the vehicle, and ultimately a really good running vehicle, because this vehicle, honestly, even in its current state, sounds great. It runs great. It's got power. It works very well. It just doesn't pass the stupid emission standards because the engine runs lean, and it's running lean because it's getting too much oxygen. I'm hoping I can fix that, but my God, isn't it crazy that in a world where we complain about all the environmental issues of pollution, etc., that we're still working off this mindset that, 20 years later we have to grind our cars up and make a whole new car, right? Now, it is possible. I've been thinking a lot about the possibility of maybe replacing this with the gasoline engine, but even that's frustrating that the CNG portion of this is running great. I'm paying roughly $2 a gallon for CNG today, paying over $5 a gallon for gasoline. Do you really think I'm going to burn gasoline if I have a choice? And yet, because I can burn gasoline, they literally won't let this car operate on the road unless I throw away the CNG component and put in an engine that only runs gas. It is absolutely ridiculous, and I am just frustrated beyond words. But again, I won't go any farther down there because it has nothing to do with the purpose of this video. But it's very frustrating to me that something as stupid as 3 little freaking O-rings essentially has the potential for making it so I can't drive this car in the state of California anymore. The cover on, just because this is how your car, or how your truck should probably look when we start. It's held on with 3 bolts. This one I'm reasonably sure is not the original bolt. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that most of these bolts were mixed up the last time I took it apart, and so although I will make a reasonable effort to explain what the bolts are, the thread's more important than the socket, because if I used a different bolt over the years, this may not be the right socket, but certainly the thread is going to be correct because I didn't replace any of the mounting hardware, just the bolts. Alright, so that said, where do we start? Very first thing we're going to do is get ourselves a clean piece of paper. And we will make a note on our paper. 5/3/24 Friday. So what are we going to do? We're going to remove the throttle body cover, 3 line out screw, and put in bolt to try to train myself to use the more correct description. Anywho, we're going to remove the air filter cover, which entails quick release mass airflow sensor disconnect, which is sort of a bear, and what is that? Thermostat, temperature sensor, temp sense. Yeah, let's call it that. So I mentioned smog, and there is a bolt at throttle body on air hose assembly. That sounds good. Alright, that will allow us to remove this. We'll disconnect that, disconnect the sensor underneath there. We won't mess with that bolt, but we'll undo the bolt over here. We'll actuate the quick release. This should lift out, and then we will store air filter in bag and cover mass airflow sensor to keep clean, though honestly I will also spray that mass airflow cleaner before I do my final assembly, because the last thing I want to do is put everything back together and have screwed myself by getting the mass airflow sensor dirty, which is highly probable depending upon how long it takes to complete this process. Once that's done, we're going to remove the power steering fluid bracket. And we will undo 3 screws and disconnect the CNG hose. I don't know what you want to call it, stabilization grommet. What the hell is it? Little plastic doohickey would probably work just as well. 3 bolts and release CNG rail clip. I'll just call it a clip. That should allow us to separate this piece from this, move that out of the way. We will go ahead and loosen CNG fuel line. Yeah, let's call it a line. That sounds good. That firewall, because I don't know what else to call that. I'll go ahead and also probably have to remove this crap, but I'm not gonna plan on that yet. So we'll get this out of the way, we'll get this out of the way, we'll get that out of the way. We're gonna remove our I'm just gonna call them smog hoses. Remove smog hoses. Now at this point, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a diagram so that we know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't necessarily expect myself to know any more than you guys do. Okay, so 1 bolt, 2 bolt, Now what I'm going to do for this is I'll just keep the bolts with the housing. I'm going to put the housing inside the cab where it's not going to get messed with. What is that? 6? Nope, it's an 8. Loosen that guy like I said I would. Loosen this guy like I said I would. Disconnect this guy probably by squeezing that thing and yanking. The mass airflow sensor is a little bit tougher. Need a nice clean bag. It's big enough to hold my new air filter. I got that sealed up. I'm going to put this in the cab. The mass airflow sensor, you got to yank this little guy off the bottom here. Unplug these two hoses, which are supposed to be tight, because if these aren't tight, then you're probably going to have vacuum leaks, and you probably should have started with that. So that we can pull this little guy out. Put our big hand in there, squeeze down on that little push and pull. I apologize, I'm not really doing a very good job of showing this piece, but it's recessed in such a way that it's not that easy to get back in there. If anyone knows an easier way to do this, feel free to leave a comment. You push in the little tab with your finger. You need to also apply pressure on the plug. And if you do it just right, I swear this thing will come apart without breaking anything. And if you do it wrong, then you broke it, and it's not my fault. Come on. Sometimes I just poke this little rubber thing through the hole. Gives me a little bit more slack. Pretty sure to push this right here, and then you should be able to yank this plug off. Crying out loud. Pull. Jesus. Jeepers. Push that little rubber thing back through the hole, and I'll show you what I was struggling with. First thing I'll mention is that this does slide back and forth, so make sure that you've given yourself the maximum amount of room to get to this piece. This needs to be pushed in. I don't know why I couldn't do it with my thumb, but if you push right there with the flathead, is what I was doing, you can release this, and then this connector just pulls straight back. This, if you turn it sideways, can be pushed up into that hole, give you a little extra room. But really, if you do it right, or if you have a strong enough thumb, I don't always have to do that. Don't lose these guys, or forget the orientation. I'm also going to say at this point what I normally would do is just take a picture of the engine bay at each step before you disconnect anything, and you'll thank yourself later. But you can also do it with the diagram I was talking about. So we have our throttle body, we have our hose, which goes to our mass airflow sensor, temp, bolt that we removed, bolt, yeah, whatever, man. Mass airflow sensor on the bottom, quick release, and filter. All right, so I removed the filter, disconnect the mass airflow sensor, by reaching through there. Yeah, I don't have to be crazy about this. And then two hoses. Probably also worth noting that this guy goes down to what I'll just loosely refer to as vapor recovery, because what else would it be? And then we have the other one that goes back to the back of throttle body. Right, so that gets us down to removing the smog hoses. This gets removed. That gets removed. And before I forget about it, I'm going to stick that mass airflow sensor in a bag as well. That in there is your mass airflow sensor. You generally clean it from this side in there. If you really want to, you can take it off with these two security torques and clean it really good. Don't use any like really high pressure air or anything. Just buy a can of mass airflow sensor cleaner. Whenever you have it out of the housing, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and stick it into a bag of some kind, and then I'll wrap this up and stick it in the cab as well. And just for the hell of it, I'm going to sketch 1, 2, 3. So we got a little bracket, and then we've got this little guy. 1, 2, 3. 3 bolts here, 3 bolts there, and we're going to remove those guys. I'm not going to remove the bottom, so this isn't going to come completely off. I don't know. What am I doing? I didn't take that off last time. I definitely take this off though. So this comes off. Be careful not to drop these into the engine bay, because I lose a lot of screws dropping them in the engine bay. If you don't have the spark plugs out, it's not as bad, because you don't have to worry about them falling inside the engine, but you still lose them and they bounce around and you never find them, and then you have to try to find new bolts and then they don't fit, and then your videos will make you look like an idiot. Where'd my cardboard go? Alright, the short one went here, and then these two go. Oh, God damn it! Did I or did I not call that? Give me that, give me that, give me that, ding, give me that, give me that. Alright, that came off because it's kind of sort of stripped from having done it a few times. And then we put this in our box. Give me that, ding. Alright, this is also the throttle cable, which oddly enough gets pushed through the stabilization clip for the fuel rail. So we'll just also make a note that there is a clip throttle cable clip, and so separate throttle cable clip from CNG fuel line under bracket for power steering. You don't need to be able to read my notes. I need to be able to read my notes. All right, we're making some progress because here is our coil, and there's our first fuel injector. Here's my CNG rail, and make sure that I'm getting a good air seal both at the CNG manifold as well as at the regular gasoline fuel rail, I guess is a better word. I don't think it's called a manifold. Anywho, yeah, both those rails need to come off. I do have new O-rings for the gas because that's a standard O-ring, but I don't have new O-rings for the CNG for the reasons we've already discussed. But I'm going to measure those and see if I can't find an O-ring that will work. I'll demonstrate that better when I get to that point. We'll also go ahead and put a bag over my throttle body just to try to keep things from getting in there. There is a bolt here that this stick is touching underneath this assembly, and there's another bolt back here. It's kind of a pain to get to, that hold the gasoline fuel rail on. And then the CNG manifold has a screw here that also holds the coil on, that serves a dual purpose of holding the front of the CNG fuel rail. And then there's a similar one in the back on one of the fuel or spark plug coils that holds the fuel rail on. You can just tell this is not going to be able to lift up off of these injectors unless this piece is removed. Anyway, so today's goal is assembly. Get this out of the way, get this out of the way, remove 2 screws from the CNG rail, 2 screws from the gasoline rail. I don't necessarily plan to do much of anything with the coils other than just to most likely loosen what I have to get the rails out of the way, and then I'll unplug these fuel injectors and take those out. And I'm reasonably sure that this brass fitting right here is where there's air leak, probably like right along here, because I think that's the O-ring that I have. There's another O-ring underneath there that I'm going to just validate And I also think it might be leaking here, because when you're not running on CNG, this still would create an airflow in potentially into that cylinder. And although I can't swear that that would be the cause, it's really the only thing I can think of. This hose is good. I replaced this hose. I replaced that hose. This hose should be good. And then as I get this taken off, I'll show you the other hoses under there that I'm pretty sure are good. This is a emissions hose. This is an emission hose. Just runs from here to here. But again, because I smoked all that, I'm reasonably sure that those hoses are good as well. Not looking forward to those failing just because they're kind of form fitted, but I make it that far, then I'm doing pretty good, because that means I got through this exercise here. Five 4. It's the new day. Primarily, I'm just struggling with how do I describe that. So I guess we'll just call this an emissions bracket that attaches to the EGR and the EGR. I don't know, what would you call this piece, right? Connector. EGR. All right. And then in parentheses, I'm going to put green cable at top and white on bottom. Then we're going to have this little piece here. And this is where your shroud goes. Now I've marked one of these with a yellow zip tie, and I've also matched the port that that hose goes to, so when I remove the hoses I'll be able to tell which of the two hoses goes where, because otherwise those hoses look pretty much identical. I don't know if it matters if you mix those up, but because I don't know, I just make a point not to. I recommend that. We're going to unplug. Plug. There's blast. I don't know. I will still remove that. I don't plan to remove the throttle body, though I think I did last time. I just don't know that I need to for this. So let's go ahead and get those two pieces out. 10 millimeter on the top and the 11 millimeter nut in the back. So I'm going to correct myself even again. One bolt, one nut, 10 millimeter bolt, 11 millimeter nut. I have what I refer to as my mechanic's rosary, which is simply a way of me being able to validate what the threads are on the actual nuts or bolts. I do this as much as anything because there's a better than average chance I'm going to drop one or more of these during the process of doing this, and then when I lose it, I'll be able to figure out what the replacement is. Turns out the nut is a little tight. In my case, it looks like I've got a block washer on there and a flat washer. this is a nut that I've lost in the past, so I'm reasonably sure that's probably why. It turns out to be, at any rate, not what we're worrying about today. What we're worrying about today is emissions caused by the O-rings, not a stupid bolt that just holds this bracket in place. So we took the nut off. We take this bolt out. This is the 10mm bolt in case I lose it. It is M6-1.0. Goes right there. Now this piece can unplug. This plug doesn't fit anything else, and I just know that, so I'm not going to worry about labeling it. Just like this plug doesn't go to anything, but I will make a note that I unplugged that, and I unplugged the thing over there. So plug times 2 plus 2 vacuum tubes, green and white. Alright, so we unplug that, we unplug that, we unplug these 2 vacuum tubes, and this piece comes out. And 2 hoses. Plus 2 bottom hoses, 1 marked yellow. All right. Try not to lose your stuff. All right. Now we're actually getting somewhere because we can see the bolt, which is clearly a new bolt from one I lost, for the front fuel rail for gasoline. And I can see the one for the back fuel rail for gasoline. And I can also get down to the bolts. So you know what? Maybe I don't need to mess with that, because let's not mess with stuff we don't need to mess with. So this is funny. I found my cardboard from the last time I did it, and the 10mm bolt that I just removed actually had the nut on the back side, and of course it is the same thread. So this is the nut that I should have used. So this time, let's just not lose our nuts. Keep our cardboard together. Hey, how's it going? We're going to try at this point to just get at that fuel rail. I'm going to take off the gasoline rail first. I'm thinking it's probably an 8mm. Yep. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, do not drop it in the engine. Add one for the CNG fuel rail. It's mislabeled because it says CNG rail 4. When we know that 2 of them are gas and 2 of them are CNG, but who cares? So 4. lose one of these extensions. This is the one that's easier to drop. We will here. Loosen it. I suppose about here we can just get in there and use our fingers. Makes it easier to not drop the nut. I hope. All right. Nut. And let's see. We got our nuts. Put that out of the way. So at this point, that fuel rail should just lift straight up, and it may or may not yank one or more of the injectors up with it. And I do see gas dripping out because I didn't use the Schrader valve to depressurize it first, and I really don't care. I just don't care because the gas will evaporate. And yep, I don't know a better way to put it, and I just don't care. All right, so we got our fuel injector. Still looks nice and clean because I cleaned it not long ago. I did go ahead and get new washers. So I'm going to replace them all at the same time so I don't forget which ones I did. And I'm really pretty sure that's not the washer that's causing the problem. If you want to get weird, you can label them, but I'm not going to. Then the CNG rail, like I say, we have to take 2 more bolts off to loosen that one up. Yep, pretty sure one's right here. Oh, you gotta love that gasoline smell. But I think this is going to actually be the smaller nut. Yep, that looks like a 7. Boop, 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 and you know you're absorbing that gasoline through your fingers too. So, you know, don't just get high on the fumes, but you know, get it all absorbed through the skin. So if all that freaks you out, then bleed the Schrader valve first and wear gloves and all that good stuff. This is a good nut to not drop. I can figure out how to do it. Magnetic socket might be a good idea. In my case, it's the claw. Grrr. I come down from the top and grab that guy just like that. And that is how I don't drop my nut. Sorry, the bolt. Man, so many words. Alright, so that's 7. And then the other one is right about here. Because you can see the attachment point on the rail to give you an idea of which one you have to take out. I guess it's the first the second coil is the first nut that you remove, and the third is the second nut that you remove. And this is sort of in the way, but because it's loose at this point, we can move it around. We can push this injector off, and then hopefully be able to wiggle this thing around a little bit. Push the rear injector off as well, because otherwise it doesn't really want to move side to side. And get your injectors out, and we should be able to move this thing a little bit better. At least I know that's fit in there snug. All right, so we're going to just lift up on the rail and push down on the injector. All right, that popped loose. It just slipped. And Jiminy crickets. All right. Yeah, that's off. Okay. I can move that to the side. Just pretty much try to wiggle it around until we can get our driver down there. As before, gotta get the right mix of extensions so that we can get down there. All right, that feels good. Loosen it up. Make sure that's loose. Bring out the claw. All right. And our cardboard. And now we should be able to lift this CNG fuel rail up and grab our first CNG injector to show you what I'm talking about. There we go. So what we have this O-ring. This is clearly one that's not fitting well. And this is the one that I think I ordered. So let's see if it fits. These are my aftermarket O-rings for the fuel injector. This is the new seal that I gambled on. perfect fit. So combined with the fact that that's the part that the diagram seemed to indicate that I would want, even though the description online indicated that was for a manual transmission. I can't imagine how the transmission makes any difference in the CNG injector. So I will try to get 7 more of those. Make sure I'm using the right one. This one might just be a little too small in diameter. I mean, the circumference looks good, but the thickness of the diameter of this particular O-ring just looks like maybe half of what it should be. That's an aftermarket one that I attempted. This one also is woefully inadequate. This is the one I'm going to have trouble sourcing because online it looked like, for some stupid reason, this one is obsolete. I may try 2, and then I'm going to wrap that with silicone tape, maybe. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. So that's where we're at. I've been thinking a lot about it because the other side is by far the more difficult of the two to do this to. If I get all 4 of these done on this side, on the driver's side, I'm going to go ahead and reassemble everything and see if I can get that error code to only come up on the other bank. And if I do, that will be a pretty good argument in my case that the clean code is caused by these injectors, and that if I can fix it on one bank, then it will just be the exact same process on the other bank. But rather than go through this exercise on every single injector to find out that it has no cause at all, then that wouldn't really make a lot of sense either. But certainly can see that this is not going to be a very good seal. That certainly won't be a very good seal. Since the injector fits in here, if air were getting in at this point or that point, it would definitely get into the system. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see how that could not have an impact on the air mixture if the cylinder wasn't airtight. Alright, so I've pulled out the second CNG injector, and kind of worked through some of this on the first one. I went ahead and I ordered 7 more of these conveniently on eBay. I ordered some of these as well. I think I found some on eBay from a company that only had 7 left. I paid a little more and I'll try to get one from Ford Parts Giant, or whatever the hell it was. Where was I? Might as well get their name right. Yeah, FordPartsGiant.com. They've got at least some of these, but this injector actually has the original still on it, because it actually looked like it might still be in decent enough shape. I don't want to break that off until I know I've got a good replacement. But what basically happens is these original O-rings, I just feel they don't have the plasticity of the originals, and they've flattened out. I mean, I don't think this was originally a flat washer. I feel like this was originally a round O-ring, but it's dried out a little bit and may not seal as well as it originally did. And my non-scientific way of testing this is to fit this in with the O-ring, plug my thumb over the bottom and the top, even though this is not going to let air through unless 12 volts is applied, but I digress. I just hold it like this. This should be airtight. I should not be able to blow or suck air through that hole, as I clearly can right now. They just basically, And yeah, probably suck gas, so don't do it again. Don't do it just because I'm doing it. But I feel like testing this at this stage, I at least should not be able to blow air through there, which I clearly can because there's no O-ring at all. I've decided 28 by 3.1 from the TMCC 880 piece 24 size metric NBRO ring kit. NBRO ring kit, whatever. I think this is a reasonable approximation of the one that I bought. I compared them side by side, and that actually looks pretty good. And then if I put this injector in, it's a little hard to get in place, but I cannot blow through that. Can't suck through that. So I think that'll work. My tip here is just make sure that you point this in the direction that you want it before you stick it in there, because it's kind of hard to spin, and this needs to be able to go into the rail, but this needs to be off to the side so you can plug it in. We'll go ahead and replace the gas O-ring, and then this bottom one I did replace. I can just see that that doesn't seal quite as well. I don't have a good way to test that, but I feel like using a second one that's just a little smaller, pressing it into there, looks like a better kind of seal. I just don't have anything I can plug that into and do the vacuum test. But I think that hopefully will snug it up a little bit. When I plug it in, I can also tell if it's snug or not. If I use the next larger size O-ring, it doesn't really want to go in at all. So that's not really workable. I'll save this one just so I have it. So again, this is an original. Much as it pains me at this point, I'm just going to leave that alone until I figure out whether or not my replacements actually fit. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and put this back in and proceed to the next one. Something like that. Unplug this guy. Gotta try to get that one out by pulling this CNG rail back. And a little wiggle and a little pulley. Well, this one actually seems pretty tight. And this is kind of the same idea I had before, so I can't swear this one's not good, but let's just have a look. Yeah, I like how tight that is. Alright, wiggly. Interesting. Wiggly. is definitely a different O-ring. And it's really a new O-ring. I think it's a new O-ring. It's not super dry and didn't fall apart when I took it off. I'm going to say that it's it's probably about 14. I'm going to say it's about 14 millimeter diameter with a 1.7, so 1.5 is probably what it is. So 14 OD, 1.5. So that was most likely one of these guys. One 14 millimeter outside diameter by 1.5 thickness. So if I compare one of these, looks a little thinner. That looks thinner. So I have another pack that's 14 by 2.5. And then this is where it gets weird, because when I look at this, it's just a little small. This says 10 by 2. Alright, so regardless of what my cheesy little effort to measure that says, if I grab one of these 10 by 2 that allegedly, okay, that makes sense, inside diameter on these. And I would be consistent, guys. Alright, so the inside diameter of 10 plus 2 is 12. So I'm going to say that this was probably closer to a 12 OD. Yeah, it looks like the same one. I'm going to say it's a 10 by 2. That was actually pretty tight. I think I'm going to stick with that. Put that on there. It is a little hard to get it in, but that's exactly what we want, because then it's probably airtight. Yeah, these both feel the same. That is pretty tight. Alright, so sadly, this was probably the original one here, because it has no plasticity at all, and it just, not only is it flattened out, but it tore. Now I know I got a new one of these, and it was definitely round and not flat, and it certainly wasn't brittle like that. So this one gets swapped out with one of these other 28 by 3.1 outer diameter times thickness from this other set. So this one goes off outer diameter by thickness and claims this is 28 by 3.1. And although that's a little tight, I think it's better than what we had. This one is going to also want to be off to the front. Alright, like that. Blow test. And blow hard enough that my inner ear makes a little popping noise, so seems airtight. This is the third one, and I only see 2 little blue washers replaced, so I'm going to go ahead and replace another one of these guys. Alright, new. Ain't going to mess with this one either because that's clearly the original until I know that I've got a replacement. And there's just one more after that. Let's drop down there. Another wiggle that in there. And we need to plug that guy in. It's in, it feels tight. And that last one's always a bear to get out, and interestingly enough, that plug actually faces to the back, which you can't really see, but it's just like the rest of them. Yep. Squeeze the 2 and yank that connector off, and then try to get the whole thing out. Not necessarily in that order. That's loose. Lift that up. Just need to figure out how to squeeze that. Oh, come on, buddy. Alright. Almost spin it around. Squeeze it till it drops off. There we go. Maybe just because it is buried, we gotta fish this thing out and get the. Okay, I got it. Nice. Yeah, it's another original. This is the smaller one. I think instead of doing the double one, even though I think there's a certain inconsistency to not using the same strategy for each one. And another one of those like I used on the other one. So this is probably another original. You know, that's actually pretty airtight though. And it feels tight. I'm inclined to say that's probably okay. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for the time being, I definitely replaced a couple on the first injector. I did the most work on the first injector. And I did replace this one. Let's see if that wasn't sufficient. Wait for the weather. O-rings to show up anyway. Where is it? Where did I put it? Alright, so this guy gets lifted up. And we need to take this around. The opposite of what we just did. Try to get this up and over without dropping it. Where we get it. More or less in place and try to wiggle that down and try to get this plugged in. Absolutely don't want to forget to plug everything back in. Alright, that is plugged in. And that is pushed down as well as I can at the moment. Grab that little CNG piece, try to make sure that it's more or less in the right spot. Get our gasoline rail in place because it will help us apply some pressure. Plug in the third one. Second one looks good. Alright, these are looking good. Got the injectors on. Oh, this is the back one. Back one's got to go into. All right, so this up. Put this around. Get that lined up. I feel like the most important thing is to make sure all the CNG injectors line up as well. So that's there. That's there. That's there. And we got the gasoline lined up. These three CNG injectors with the hole in the fuel rail. wiggle those around until I get them just right. You can kind of see we're getting as much of this stuff out of the way as to your advantage. This needs to come forward about there. Just get into here. Come on. There. Now it goes here. Lift it up and wiggle it. That guy. That's another thing we need to keep lined up. Helps to have a stool so you can climb on up in here. This point, I think I need a light. So we'll resume. I don't want to cut much of this out because I do want to kind of illustrate just how big of a pain in the neck this step is, because if someone else is doing this for you, this is probably why they're going to charge you a lot of labor. And similarly, why I'm not going to pay anybody to do it for me if I can avoid it. So once we're reasonably sure that all those holes are lined up, we need to make sure that it seats well. And I'll use a stick for this because it allows me to push directly on this bar in a way that I can't really get in there otherwise. You kind of just want to press over each injector port. Try to make sure that it's seated as well as we're going to get it seated. find it also helps to sort of shift it forward and backward a little bit just to make sure that all those injectors are fitted properly. At which point we need to start seeing if our screw hole lines up. Makes me wonder if maybe that hose isn't supposed to be on top of the fuel rail. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's actually looking pretty good to the extent that I can see it. Now we'll see if I can get these screws to go in. This is where I usually drop them. This is the tricky part. You can't really use the claw to put it in the right spot. So I like to put it, my finger on it like this. I'll try to get it as close as I can. And it's going to be right underneath this. These hoses out of the way. We'll go ahead and unplug this injector. It should give me a shot to get this in that hole. Wiggle the coil. And it feels like we're in threads. Don't tighten it all the way because we still have to get the other one in. It'll be a little trickier farther back. Yeah. Guess I shouldn't have put the gasoline injector rail back on yet. Lift that off. Lift it back. And see if we can't get this guy back where we want it without dropping anything. Oh my God, we dropped it. Well, it happens every freaking time. And it's in a tough spot because of the injector. Crap. How are we going to get that thing out of there without making it worse? Well, you know what? Ow. So freaking knees. Ow. Occasionally when you take apart a hard disk, you get these magnets. Stick the magnet on a flathead and stick the flathead down by the screw. So it did pick it up, and then it did promptly drop it again. Not that many places it could have gone. Sitting right there. I picked it up. And I dropped it. Where would it have gone? Holy smokers. There it is, okay. So by having moved it, I think now I can grab it. Just see where the hell it went. I literally just saw it. There it is. Boy, that is in a dicey spot. Just about to slip down into oblivion. Get out the claw. Come on, claw, don't fail me now. Oh, thank you, claw. And just for the hell of it, I'm going to try to put it in with the claw. So you know that we want this right there. Right there, and in that hole. I don't want it. There we go. I want that to let go. And now, if I did that right, and I can find my other socket, which is way the hell over there. All right. Put the fuel rail back and hooty and love. Killian, you son of a gun. Yeah. Sunshine, my only sunshine, I make me happy when skies are gray. I never knew, dear, how much I love me. What the hell are we doing? So, like she says, you'll know it when it goes in. If you're doing it right. If you're doing it right and you get it in the right hole, you should know it. If you're, okay, so I clearly missed something because I can wiggle this coil around and the bolt's not wiggling, so I missed the coil. So even if I manage to get this thing to go in, it's no good because the coil is disconnected. Also be why that was it was going in all right, and it was going in too easy because it didn't go through the coil. So it's literally the rail sits on top of the coil, and the coil needs to be there. So we need to pull this guy back out. And get the coil in the right spot. Get the screw in to the coil, like so. Alright, that feels better. That feels like it should. Tighten that one down because I'm just overconfident today. And we'll find the other one. Tighten that one down. In for a penny, in for a pound, and all that stuff. Plug this injector back in. This reel back on. Get my stick out. Wiggly, 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 wiggly. This just means you need a bigger hammer. Alright, get on there, you stupid thing. It's horrible. Who built this? Sunshine, my own sunshine. Okay, get the front one in. And get the back one in. Get this one in, and things are looking up because it wouldn't go in if it wasn't down at least moderately far. I am feeling a little extemporaneous, Roxanne. Go up the size on my socket from 7 to 8. Sun, my only sunshine. Boo 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 Ow, whatever. I'll ask you anyway. I don't have torque specs. I've never used torque specs. I mean, I use torque specs for other things, but I mean, it's a fuel system, right? It's not like your wheels are going to fall off. Worst that'll happen is your engine will catch on fire, I suppose. But I like to think I'll smell gasoline first. So let's go with that. 4 bolts. Oh yeah. All right, so everything goes on. The reverse that it came off. We want to make sure that the coils are plugged in and the injectors are plugged in, because that's just going to cause an immediate misfire. Forget one of those. Alright, so this is going to go here, bolt, and a green, and a white, and they're kind of offset, so you can't really screw those two up. And this plug goes right here, because where else could it go? And this plug goes over here, because one plug reminds you to do the other plug. So these two little hoses. One is not yellow, and one is yellow. Yellow one, and the yellow spot, and the not yellow one, and the not yellow spot. And make sure that it doesn't have any leaks, so we're going to get an emissions issue, which is what we're trying to fix, not create. I'll figure out where our little plug went, and that goes in here, and then that goes on there, and that goes right there. And then that lets us know that that goes here, and that bolt goes there, and then that's going to be a 10 if I remember correctly, instead of an 8. God forbid they should make everything the same size. It's not this bolt that I took off this time, but it's the bolt that I took off the time before, so it'll work. And this one is just stripped because I had the wrong bolt on there before, so I guess I will try to rethread this by forcing the conversation. Again, I don't recommend this. And if I wasn't fairly confident that this is what I used last time, or the first time, I wouldn't be willing to have this dialogue. But under the circumstances, ow, I feel pretty confident this is the right bolt. I don't think I'm cross-threading, I think I'm re-threading. And again, it's not like I'm working on the axle or something, and the brakes. It's just a bracket. And it's nice that it tightens up enough that there's obviously some threads there. So let's just go with that. Pretend that I didn't screw up last time, and then next time it'll look like it was all right. Like that. And I ever do. And that goes there. And this thing comes back here, and this loops up through there. And then that pokes into there. Oh, come on, we'll get in there. Oh. Start by buying me a drink first. All right. This goes here. And this one goes here, according to our diagram. If you recall, I made a little picture and tells me where the screws go. This goes in that hole. Right over there. That goes there. That goes in the hole. Another possible air leak. I'll just doesn't seem right. Well, I'm pretty sure this part's right, so we'll just keep going. I'm sure it's going to be 8 again. Okay, I'm not forcing it, so there's no cross-threading going on. Again, it's just a bracket, so I'm not worried about torque specs or anything. This on. This is, I'm pretty sure this is going into aluminum and it's steel, so you want to make sure that's not cross-threaded, but it feels pretty good. Pretty good. Alright, so now we want to put our air hose back on. Mr. Bizzardo. Actually a triangular piece here at the bottom, which is the key that you use to make sure that this is in alignment properly. It spins around like that, and we'll put our filter in, we'll put our mass airflow sensor back in. For now, I'm just going to make sure this out real good, and dust or dirt that I got in there. This is the inside of the air filter, should be clean. Also take this opportunity to twist this thing around pretty good and look for cracks. That would certainly give us the airflow issues that we're having. I do not see any holes or rips or tears. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Don't see any light. Don't see any holes. Don't see any cracks. Everything looks all white. There. This one clearly goes on the bottom. Still got to figure out why all of a sudden this doesn't seem to fit the same way it did before. Place. That fits on like that, and that fits on like that. Like that. And you know what, that actually looks good enough, I guess. Still feels a little off, but yeah. Looks airtight, I guess, is the important part. I know I still have to do the other side. Again, the goal of this particular experiment, if I put it back together and clear the codes and drive it around, I would really like to see this bank not have a lean code and that bank continue to have a lean code, in which case I'll know I'm on the right track. I'll still go ahead, and when the washers come in the next week or so, next weekend maybe, repeat what I just did, but also go ahead and remove all the CNG stuff, which is going to be much more involved. I'll also try to make a point of documenting that when we get there, but for the time being, air filter, the master flow sensor, mass airflow cleaner. Crazy. It'll dry before we get it all hooked up. We're using this up. Opposite of what we did earlier. Plug in our temperature gauge. Our airflow sensor connector. It's easier to plug in and unplug. Believe, make sure the tab's in the right direction. Come on, buddy, you can do it. There we go. Again, this is kind of keyed. Also kind of restricted by how many places it can go based upon how short that cable is. Make sure you plug this little rubber piece in so that you don't have any holes down there. It's oval, not round, so it only really goes in like that. This lines up, ratchets in place. Ah, son of a biscuit. Air filtering. Not to get it dirty. Alright. New air filter, clean airflow sensor. Wiggly, wiggly. Come on, Wiggles. All right. And what I miss? Put it in the comments. Forgot to tighten this guy up. Tight, tight, tight. Going miscellaneous crap out of the engine bay. Have our connector for our Innova ODB2 reader. Turn our ignition on. Let it negotiate. The check engine light is on. We got 2 stored codes, kind of like we knew we would. We're going to erase these because we worked on it. We have a reason to hopefully believe it might be better. And now we will turn it on. And of course, it's got a bunch of errors. These are because the sensors aren't set. So we have to drive it around a little bit, and there's a timing, kind of time sensitive thing where we have to drive it within a certain amount of time, certain speed. So I'm going to get that out of the way and then see what, if anything, happens. All right, so this is my drive test for my CNG injector injector O-ring replacement test. I've only done the driver's side, but I'm hoping with the work that I've done that I can get the lean code that was previously on both banks to present only on a single bank. That will kind of help me confirm that the air was getting in at the injectors. Now, if I get link codes on both of them, there's still two possibilities. One is that the O-ring selection that I attempted still not forming an airtight seal, and I should wait for the official parts that I can get and replace as many of those as I can, even though it's $100 a pop. The other thing is obviously that the air is getting in the system some other way, and maybe I just need to re-smoke it again. Look for some other hose that has an issue. But hopefully, with a relatively short drive, usually only takes a couple of trips. Now, the first trip, I would expect to see a pending code. If it comes up with a lean code, it is a, as I understand it, is like a 2-cycle test. So I have to drive somewhere, let it go pending, shut the car off. I think it may even actually have to be off for a specific amount of time. Power the car on, do basically the same kind of drive test, which I think is around 50 miles an hour. And then after that, it should assert itself on the second drive if it gets the same lane code, and then it essentially becomes a permanent stored code. At that point, I'll know if it's a dual bank or a single bank issue. But I'm telling you, the car sounds good to me, and it really irritates me that I got to jump through all these hoops for the emissions, because in other states it wouldn't be an issue, but California sun tax or whatever they call it. Alright, so the drive test went pretty good. It does show yellow, but I think that's actually because my cat sensor hasn't reset yet. So if I shut this off, turn it on, I don't expect it to assert itself yet, but I do want to see if there's a pending code for lean. Okay, so bank 1 is lean. It's usually, yep, see, pretty much before I even move, that pending code goes lean. But I think this is a really good sign, because what we see here is that it's only bank 1, and before I did that, it was bank 1 and bank 2. Now, it's possible the next drive I'll get the other pending code, but I feel really optimistic that if I can get this to assert only on bank 1 and bank 2 stays clear, I just need to do what I just did all over again, but with the passenger side. So we'll see. But this is actually really encouraging for the first test.